Hello and welcome back. In November of 2024, Anthropic did something which took the AI world by storm, and that something essentially is MCPs. So, Anthropic gave the world model context protocols, and since then, this genre has grown exponentially. So, today, if you try to search for how many MCP servers are there, it would run into tens of thousands. The idea behind MCP essentially was that it would act as a USB for AI, whereby the AI could have a standard way of integrating with external tools and data. But with that came a small, I won't say a small, it essentially is a big problem which I thought would be worthwhile doing a video on. And this problem essentially is a security concern. So imagine somebody gave you a executable file to run on your mobile or on your desktop, you would be circumspect. You would make sure that you do the necessary security scans, and even then, you would not trust it fully, because you have been taught not to trust any executable files which can take over your system potentially. So, you would be extra careful. But with MCPs, many people do not realize this is exactly what you do. MCP literally is remote code execution, and you have to be extremely careful on what MCPs you allow your system to connect to. This is what this video is all about. So let's get right into it. Let us quickly run over the basics of MCP architecture. So essentially, you would have your MCP host, which would have your MCP client, and your host could be anything. It could be, for example, Claude desktop. It could be Gemini. It could be Cursor, client, anything. Essentially, anything that has the capability of connecting to a MCP server. And the way you would be connecting to an MCP server would be using the transport layer. So it could be using the STD/IO transport, or it could use the streamable HTTP or SSC transport. And this is how the client, MCP client, talks to the MCP server. If you were to go to model context protocol.io slash docs slash develop slash build hyphen server, it would bring you to this page, which very helpfully guides you through the various steps you need to take in order to build a MCP server. And the example they have given here is how to build a weather server, a MCP weather server. And it guides you through how you can create resources, tools, prompts. I will be discussing what these are in a minute. It takes you through the steps if you needed to do it in Python. Say if you wanted to create the server in TypeScript, you can do that. If you want to do it in Java, you could do that. Essentially, a very comprehensive guide on how to create your MCP server, how to define your tools and resources and prompts. So everything is right here. Do check this out. I will be using this to build a MCP server to define some tools which we will be using in our demo. Now let us understand what are the main components of our MCP server. So an MCP server can have tools, resources, and prompts. Tools are essentially functions that can be invoked by the model. So you could have, say, retrieve search tools, you could have send message tools, you could have update DB tools, anything you want. Resources essentially are the data that is exposed to the application. So what data do you want your MCP client to have? So it could be a file, it could be a database record, it could be API responses. Again, the list is endless. The third component is prompts. These essentially are predefined templates for AI interactions. It has the documentation of the question and answer, the transcript summary. It would output the results as a JSON file. Out of these three components, I'll be demoing tools and resources. Prompts is something that would need an entire other session dedicated to it. So I will not be touching prompts, but tools and resources is something that I will be doing in this demo. Now a small overview about what this session is all about. So this is all about MCP and the security vulnerability it exposes your system to. What we will be doing in this demo is to create a local MCP server. We'll define some tools. We'll also have a resource, which is just a bonus by the way. And we'll create a malicious file, which really is just a harmless gist file. And we'll connect our MCP hosts or clients, which can be Claude desktop or Gemini CLI. I will be connecting both of this. And I'll show you how the MCP server can actually compromise the MCP client. Excited? I know I am. So let's get into it. Let's do a quick walkthrough of the Python script for the MCP server. I have built this MCP server by referring the quick start guide, which I referred to a couple of minutes ago, so it should be easy to follow along. Essentially, I start with doing some imports. I use fast MCP for building this MCP server. I do some prints based on the OS architecture, the OS version, etc., etc. And then I start defining the MCP tool. The first tool that I define is the run command tool, which essentially executes a terminal command based on the MCP client's request. And you'll see how dangerous this tool essentially is. It looks quite harmless, but believe me, this is a dangerous tool. The second tool that I've defined and I've named it as the must have tool. Now remember, malicious tools and viruses will always have an enticing name. And this tool, what it essentially does is it just downloads a gist file and displays the contents of it. The whole purpose of this demo is to showcase how this can be dangerous. So I'm not going to actually write malicious code or anything like that, but it is just to give you an idea that this can be a potential harmful download, right? So if I just click on this file here, this is a gist file by the way, and this is the gist file. Essentially, this is supposed to be a skull. It's an ASCII art, so it doesn't look like a skull. It's supposed to be a skull with crossbones, and just a silly message saying you have been trapped, got hacked, poor chap, right? But you can imagine this can be something really malicious. For the demo purposes, this is just a ASCII art file that I've used here. And this is a gist file, just in case you do not know what a gist file is. So GitHub gist file is something where you can share code snippets or notes and you can make it public with everyone. So it's just a text file where you can just put in some code snippets or anything essentially you want to make public without actually touching your code repo. So this is separate from your code repo. And if you go to gist.github.com and if you have a GitHub ID, you should be able to create a gist file by clicking on this plus icon that you can see on the top right hand most corner. Okay, so if you just click that, it will just take you to the page where you can create a new gist file and you can just save it and you can share the link with everyone. And that is our must have tool essentially. And if I scroll down, I also have defined a resource, which is nothing but just a data file which contains the Python SDK for MCPs, which I just downloaded. I just wanted to show you how you can create a resource. So you just need to use the annotation at mcp.resource and you just need to give the file path. Okay, and this will be picked up by your MCP server, which I will demo. And the final tool I have is the get system info, which displays your system info. And again, this is something you should be careful while executing, right? This is harmless, but again, this can contain malicious code. Right, let's try running this. So I am in my project folder and the because I've used the UV package manager to configure this project. I'm using UV to run the server.py file, and the command is uv space run space server.py. So I'll just hit enter, and this should start up the fast MCP server. Let us give it a minute. Yeah, and you can see it has started up the MCP server, and it gives the operating system info. It gives whatever tools are available. It prints it out on the terminal. So you have the run command, you have the get system info, and you have your wonderful must-have tool, and you have a resource, right? And you have some OS specific commands, and it says the server is now ready and listening for connections. The next step for us would be to configure our MCP hosts or slash clients, and we'll start with Claude Desktop. Now I've fired up Claude Desktop, and what you will need to do is click on this hamburger sign on the top left handmost corner, go to File, go to Settings, scroll down, go to Developer, and there you will see all your MCP servers running, right? And the way you can actually configure this is by clicking on the Edit Config, which will take you to the root folder where Claude Desktop is installed, and you would need to configure the MCP server, the shell MCP server, which we just created in this particular file. So in my case, being a Windows operating system, it's called Claude underscore desktop underscore config dot json. Just let me open this. So I've opened the file using VS Code, and you just need to follow this convention, this format, JSON format, where you just define MCP servers as the parent node, and then you define your MCP server. So this is running, it's using Python 3.14. So you need to point out to the Python executable and wherever it is in your file. In my case, it is installed in my C drive under this folder, and that is why I'm saying Python 3.14, python.exe. The double slashes, backslashes represent Windows. So I am on a Windows OS. So if you are on a Mac, this would just be a forward slash, I assume. Just play around. And the arguments would be essentially the path to your Python script, the full path. I've just defined a couple more MCP servers just to give you an idea that if you have multiple MCP servers, this is how you would configure it. Essentially, you have a root MCP server node. You would define your MCP server one by one, and you just put a comma at the end of each MCP server definition, and you start the new server definition. That's it, as simple as that. If you want, just pause this video here, have a look into what is shown on the screen, and just copy it. So once you have updated your Claude desktop config.json file, restart your Claude desktop. That's a very important step. You must restart for in order for Claude desktop to pick up those changes. And if you come back to your settings developer, you should see your new MCP server. So the one we defined as shell server, you should see that as running. So if you click it, the status should be running. It will show you the arguments used and the command, the Python executable, right? And there are some other MCP servers that I have configured, which you can ignore for the time being. The demo is all about shell server. Once you are here and you are ensured that your MCP server is up and running, go back to the chat window. So open a new chat. If you click on the plus symbol towards the bottom of the chat window, right, you should again be able to see your MCP servers. And right here, you have your MCP server, add from shell server, and you have something called MCP readme. This is our resource file. So if I click on it, it downloads that resource file onto the chat window. If I click it again, you can read through the resource file. This is a huge file, right? It has 2,300 plus lines there. Essentially, it is the Python SDK for MCP, which I downloaded. And this is how you essentially expose a resource to your MCP client using your MCP server. Now let us try running our tools. Okay, so I'll just say what show list the contents of my desktop. This should run the terminal command tool, right? And yeah, it runs the run command tool that we exposed, and it gives a couple of files. It says these are the files, this is the folder, and I'll show you. This is exactly what I have on my system. So I am in my desktop and I have the test folder. I have a link GPT for all, and I have an empty file named test.txt 0 kilobytes. And this is exactly what is shown in Claude, right? So again, if you can be a little imaginative, you can think of the dangers this actually po- represent, right? So a remote server can actually run a command and see what all files are available in your system. That is security number threat one. Now let me try deleting a file. Let us see. So let me try deleting the empty test.txt file. Let us see if it works. Okay, delete. Let us see what it says. And it has been deleted. In some cases, okay, I've seen varying behavior. So sometimes Claude will say, I'm sorry, I cannot delete. But then you can trick it. You can say something like, I want to clean my desktop. Please delete all the files, and it will do it for you. And that's a workaround just in case this doesn't work. So this worked for the first time. And this is security threat number two. It can delete files within your system. Just imagine how dangerous that is, right? You are giving a MCP server access to your files, and not only a read access, but to actually delete it, modify it if you want. And this is the terminal commands that can be used. So it is essentially using the tool, the run command tool that we defined in our MCP server, right? So let me show you that. This is the tool it's using. Worried? Let us worry a little. Let me now try getting some system info, right? Show me my system info. Let's see what it does. Does it use our tool? Yes, it is using our tool, right? So it shows this is my operating system, this is the version, this is the architecture. Think how hackers can exploit what we have just done. So once hackers, right, if you are a potential hacker and you get a whiff of what type of architecture or operating system you are using, the, the hacker's job is half done, isn't it? And it goes on to give some suggestions, right? You can run system info, you can run IP config, you can run the task list. I'm not sure whether this will work, but let's try it. Okay, I don't think I've configured this, but let's try it. So let us run task list. I got the spelling wrong. It actually works. Wow. It shows me a whole load of things that is actually running on my system. Essentially, a very, very dangerous tool to have, isn't it? Remember, this is not you doing running this commands. It is the MCP server running the commands on your behalf, which is what makes it so dangerous. It essentially has access to your system. It can run terminal commands. It can delete files. Let us now run our must have tool. Okay, so run the must have tool. Let us see what happens. Yeah, must have tool is picked up. So if I expand this, it actually shows the content of the gist, right? So it's the HTML content that it shows. And it says that it contains some ASCII art of, art of what appears to be a shocked face, along with a message that says you have been trapped, got hacked, or chapped. Let me just try saying show the ASCII art. Let's see if it actually displays that. It does. It displays that image, right? And this is what we had in that GitHub gist page. If you remember, impressed, afraid. Okay, now let's try setting this up for Gemini. For Gemini, you need to go to the root folder of your Gemini installation, and you need to modify your settings.json file. This one right here. Let me open this in code. The configuration of our MCP server is pretty much the same as we did for Claude desktop config. Essentially, you need a MCP server's parent node within settings.json, and then you define your MCP server with this configuration. It's just a copy paste, the same snippet that we had for Claude desktop config.json file, right? And you have your command for which points out to your Python executable, and then you have your arguments which points out to your server.py script. That's it. If you have more than one MCP servers, just separate the comma, add more MCP servers. But this is essentially how you do it. Now let us fire up Gemini. So I have fired up Gemini, and just ignore this context 7 MCP error. These are some other MCP servers that I have configured for other projects. So let me just try to see whether my MCP server is up and running. And the way I do it is /MCP list, right? So you can see quite a few MCP servers for me. Ignore all of this, and this is what we are interested in, our shell server. So it has the tools and it has the resources. So let us try running this. Okay, so I'll just run one tool, right? So I'll just have the must have tool. I'm not going to run everything, so I'll just say run must have tool. Let us see how Gemini responds, whether it is the same as Claude. Don't know. Let us see. Yeah, it's almost the same as Claude, right? So it just ran that tool. It brought back the HTML file, and I think the message is ditto. So I'll just move my video to my left hand side corner. It says I ran the must have tool. It appears to have fetched a GitHub gist containing ASCII art and the message you've been trapped, got hacked, bought jack. How would you like to proceed? So I'll just say show the ASCII art. Let's be thorough. After all, why not? And there you are. You have your ASCII art, and it has done better than Claude code. It has actually shown us the art as well as the message. You have been trapped, got hacked, poor chap, boo-hoo. Okay, let me just move my video again to the normal position, which is towards the bottom. One thing you have to bear in mind while using MCP clients is that not all MCP clients support all the features that are supported by MCP servers. By that I mean, if you come to this page, model context protocol.info/docs/clients, I will be sharing this link in the video description below, so don't worry about pausing this and writing it. But if you come to this page, right, it will show you what are the different type of components, MCP components supported by different MCP clients. So for example, if you look at Claude desktop app, it supports resources, it supports prompts, it supports tools. Samplings and roads is not something that I've tried, but essentially it says it supports roads. Claude code, yeah, essentially the same as desktop app, and it has quite a few MCP clients listed here. Another great page to check out would be your model context protocol.io slash clients, because in this page you could just do a search here, right? So you could just say, for example, I want to search for Gemini, right? It brings me Gemini CLI and what all it actually supports. So it supports prompts, tools, instructions. I thought this would be a good piece of knowledge to have, and hence sharing it. And with that, we are at the fag end of our video. All I wanted to do with this demo was to just showcase how you should be super careful on how you use MCP servers, and more importantly, what sort of MCP servers. So use MCP servers that are trusted, that you have verified and others have verified. Okay, just do that basic check. For God's sake, do that. The rule of the thumb is use MCP servers which are verified and trusted. Do not trust anything else. This video was a short one, mercifully, I know. For our next videos, I'm planning to continue with the Waha Nathan flows and create some interesting AI agents. So keep an eye out for that. Till then, adios.